Glitch recently posted a teaser for the final chapter of the Amazing Digital Circus. This image is the whole teaser, no text was associated with it, but clearly it is a reference to the Neon Genesis Evangelion film, End of Evangelion. It is unclear if this was artwork made by Gooseworks personally or just something Glitch made for promotional material, but as it turns out, there are a whole lot of parallels we can draw between the Amazing Digital Circus and Evangelion, so someone knew what they were doing. There are some obvious similarities, such as both being an animated series first, before releasing a film in theaters that begins by recapping part of the series and ends with brand new content, which is certainly more than a coincidence, but if that was all, then this wouldn't be a video. There are some much more interesting similarities that may lend an insight into the production of the Amazing Digital Circus and the roller coaster that team has been on trying to get this film to release without a hitch. First, we need to establish a bit of history and clear up some misconceptions. This is important because we don't know what side of the story the people at Glitch subscribe to. Evangelion was released by the animation studio Gainax in 1995, and the anime industry looked quite different back then. Gainax was established by Hideaki Anno and a group of his college friends in the early 1980s under the name Daikon Film. But before Evangelion, the ragtag group struggled to stay in operation, at times relying on income from some adult video games they made. Evangelion was their big break, their chance to be in the spotlight and make a name for themselves. They had an agreement to air their show and the pressure was on to stick with it, only building as it garnered more and more of an audience. They had gone from making booby games just to barely scrape by, to having a chance for a series on television, to having a popular series on television. If you know the original Evangelion anime, then you know where this is going, the final 2 episodes. Critically, they were a failure. The series ditches the grand mech versus kaiju fights entirely and caps off their 26-episode anime with an abstract art piece diving into the main character's psyche. Why would they do this? Why would a group of sci-fi otakus drop the plot so heavily? Why would they eschew the one thing that was bringing them success? It doesn't make any sense. And so from this confusion there came some rumors. The most popular idea is that they simply ran out of money. The last 2 episodes feature a lot of sketches and still frames and copied animations that look like shortcuts a dying or inexperienced studio might take. See One Punch Man Season 3. Following the release of these 2 episodes, so the rumor goes, the studio was harassed by angry fans. They allegedly received death threats, hate mail, graffiti on the walls of their headquarters, and so on. So because their ending was not accepted by the fans, they created the film The End of Evangelion, which featured an all-new ending. But this ending was also abstract and inconclusive. It tied up loose ends from the original anime, but left more questions unanswered. It is commonly believed this was done on purpose by Anno to spite the fans who didn't appreciate the ending of the anime. There is even a section of the film referred to as the death threats sequence, where many letters, emails, and graffiti are quickly flashed on screen. So in short, the fans hate Hideaki Anno, and he hates the fans, which has made the series objectively worse off. Doesn't that sound familiar? But wait, did you see the problem with that logic? It's sort of a have your cake and eat it too situation if you think about it. Or maybe a don't have your cake and also don't eat it, and if someone else tries to eat your cake, ruin the cake for everyone situation. If the rumors are to be believed, Anno simultaneously dislikes the ending and hates the people who say they dislike the ending. We are supposed to believe he ran out of money to make it the way he wanted to make it, then released a movie where he can create his vision nigh unrestricted, but instead uses it as a chance to piss the fans off some more. Let's get to the clearing up part. First of all, the studio did not run out of money, they ran out of time, which is a distinction that may make little difference in the end. Evangelion really was their golden goose. They even referred to it as such themselves during and after production. It was the first thing they made that put Gainax in the black without showing whole. But remember, the pressure was on to keep this gravy train rolling, and those last 2 time slots had to be filled. The broadcast studios were promised 26 episodes and Gainax had to deliver one way or another. Okay, so that's why the episodes are bad. They were rushed to deliver anything and didn't have time to care about quality or proper endings, right? Well, no, not at all. When originally asked about the 2 episodes, Anno said he liked them and felt they properly ended the series. Other staff members were in agreement, though they were anxious about the public reception. Anno even said "too bad" in reference to people unhappy with the ending. To be fair, it was rushed. No one on staff is denying that, Anno included. But they didn't just give up. They followed their vision to the very end. What you see in those last 2 episodes is a frantic attempt at telling the last bit of their story in as quick a way as possible. Had they more time, it would only have been more visually interesting and less repetitive. The abstract nature of the ending is what they wanted to do, and we were going to get that regardless. Okay, so then what is the end of Evangelion? Did they make that film just because people weren't happy about the ending? Did Anno make that ending bad just to get back at those ungrateful fans sending him death threats over his cartoon? Are we supposed to believe they made the film to appease the fans but made the ending weird to spite them? Again, no, it just doesn't add up. They knew they wanted to make an Evangelion film before the airing of the last 2 episodes, and it was likely already being written. It's a fabulous opportunity for the studio that was already getting extremely lucky with the success of the series. So if Anno was so proud of his ending, why did he change it? I wouldn't say he actually did. I believe he put his nose down and wrote that ending not to spite or appease fans, but out of a personal love of his series. And he didn't do it to erase the ending he gave it to begin with. Instead, he was beginning to play with the idea of alternate timelines in the series, where things happen to go just slightly differently. So really, the end of Evangelion film is a sequel to the anime, not a reboot. If you know Evangelion, that may sound familiar. Much later, they get another chance to make some Evangelion movies, and at first they look like one-to-one remasters, which would have been perfectly okay. People have done that before. But even from the very first few scenes, there are some notable differences. These differences pile up and become more and more extreme until the rebuild movies have completely run away with their own plot entirely, simultaneously confirming that each time we have viewed the series, it has been a sequential timeline, never a reboot. The character Kaoru has been there every single time, one of the few aware of the cycle, waking up from his coffins on the moon, flanked by his own sealed coffins on the left and empty ones on the right. I could go on about this series, but let's not lose focus. Oh, and that death threat sequence? First of all, the mail that flashes on screen was sent in reaction to the first Evangelion movie, Death and Rebirth, not the final 2 episodes. And if you actually go and translate it, you'll find that it is mostly positive fan mail, albeit with some nasty things mixed in. But the real kicker is that none of it is real. Apparently, they couldn't use genuine fan mail for legal reasons, so everything you see was written by the staff. The person who wrote the hate mail was an old friend of Anno's, and Anno praised him for how real it seemed. And the graffiti? Well, it certainly is crass. That says sex. The part next to it says poop. Over on the right, they wrote something dirty too, I won't repeat. And this just says die on the sign announcing the Gainax shop. But this is just what we see in the movie. So was this fabricated by staff too? I have had a lot of trouble finding the original story of angry fans putting graffiti on their studio. In fact, I have had trouble finding any first-hand reports about Gainax being harassed to begin with, and this is the story people have really run with. I am sure they were harassed to some degree, but with the way anime fans are, they could have released a banger ending and still gotten death threats for the way they styled Asuka's hair or something. My point being, some harassment from the public audience is unfortunately par for the course. But was it actually enough for creative minds to alter their creation? When you put something into the public eye, you are inherently opening yourself up to be criticized. All good creators know this. No one knows that better than our lovely present-day creator, Gooseworks. So how does this all relate back to her and the Amazing Digital Circus? It depends on what she or Glitch or whoever were trying to imply with this promotional art, if anything. It's possible Goose herself made this artwork as a way of expressing something without saying it out loud. Maybe she feels how I do and appreciates how Anno stuck to his guns creatively, and will do so herself as well. Or maybe she believes in making the show bad just to get back at the so-called fans, as so many believe Anno had done himself. But really, let's think about this. Would someone really throw their own brainchild down the garbage disposal just over some unfortunate extraneous circumstances and rude people on the internet? Personally, I think a creative person won't trash what they're creating for any reason. We know Goose is passionate about making this show as good as it can be. She's just understandably burnt out on internet drama. We saw in these tweets that they were super crunched on time before the release of the final episode, but rather than cutting corners or giving up, she and others on the team were up pushing 17-hour days trying to finish this thing in time, all while being completely and openly harassed by anyone and everyone. A normal person would throw in the towel. Someone who doesn't care about their artistic vision would say, "Forget it, do whatever, they don't deserve a good ending." But no, she has said that the ending is set in stone and nothing will change it. She has retained her artistic integrity despite the uncomfortable situations people have put her through. I'm sure the ending is great, or it's at least exactly what Goose wants it to be.